Everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. So today we're going to talk about setting up a Vitrigraph kiln. And so in front of us here, Val's got some flower pots ready to go. So if you're not familiar, a Vitrigraph is the term means a few things to people, but we kind of mean either the process or the actual type of kiln. So what's going to happen is we're going to fill one of these flower pots with a bunch of glass, and then it's going to go into a kiln that's raised above the floor. And of course the flower pot has a hole in the bottom. So when the glass gets molten, it's going to drip out of the hole in the bottom, and then we're going to grab it and twist it. You can see some of the stuff here on the table. These pieces were made with the Vitrigraph on top. This is some of the loose Vitrigraph that's here. You can see this is one of the flower pots, what's left over, right? These lovely flower pots.
Yep. So we were going to tell you too that we found that you think the clay pots are clay pots, and I think for the most part they are, but some of them tend to hold up more than others, like multiple firings, or at least get through the one firing without breaking. And so I think what you really should look for are some that are made, they either say made in the U.S. or Italian. Italy, made in Italy, because those tend to for some reason, whatever the makeup is, seems to work out better. So
yeah, this one was fired. I mean, we already did this one. You can see it. I mean, it looks the same as it always has, right? So it's held up pretty good. We could reuse it if you wanted to just use the same colors.
You could reuse it. You're always going to have that leftover residue, because I don't know if who knows what about this, but one of the questions we get a lot is, do you use kiln wash?
Yeah.
No, you don't. And that's why there's always going to be a coating of glass in there, because as the glass would melt and pull down, it would pull the kiln wash into the glass, and it wouldn't be pretty.
Or the boron, right? Sometimes people
or
use
the boron
nitride spray, the zip spray, same deal, right?
Don't use it.
It'll you'll pull it into your glass, and everything will have some white in it or something. So
Right. So we have, this is, and some people do this. We do it. I do it sometimes, and sometimes I forget. Yeah. But it's just a clear square that I cut to go over the hole in the flower pot.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
Do you?
So glass doesn't fall through. I mean, to me, one of the nice things about doing this technique is it's a great way of using up scrap. I mean, we're using some smaller pieces we have, and we're cutting them smaller, but I mean, perfect way to get rid of all those little small pieces of glass that you have and not sure what to do with.
Yeah, I always just start out by making sure they're not taller than the flower pot, because I've done that before, and then you can't get the lid on, and eventually it melts, but it's not probably the most efficient, efficient way to do it. So then we just cut strips. Now, I won't get into the strip cutting process as opposed to my technique versus someone else's technique, but
I'm not sure what I mean by that, but
well, I just strip it up. How I usually do it is, because I do have a technique. I don't know if you even knew this. Did you?
I didn't, no.
So I will just start like on the end, and I kind of measure my finger by looking at it, and I'll just go straight across, and then I move my finger like just a finger width, and then I go right next to my finger again, and it really actually gets me fairly similar strips. Some people will actually use a ruler.
So now you're making that would be me. I would use a ruler.
Put little black dots, and that works fine. You can do it, obviously whatever you feel like you need to do. But
well, I think the point is
they don't need
to be consistent, right? Really,
right.
I mean, it's all going to melt, so it doesn't really matter how consistent your strips are. But I think it does help to keep them relatively narrow.
They
just
fit
it's
better.
Easier to fit in. They're easier to fit into the.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and maybe start loading. I'll try to load it like I loaded the one that's over there. And then if you want to talk about because we do it sort of in sections, right?
Yeah, we kind of do it in sections.
You don't mix them all together, and because that tends to not really work really good.
Yeah, really. So we're not stacking them like I'm on top of each other, right? We're kind of putting them in quadrants almost inside the flower pot, and you can use transparent and or opaque. You can mix transparents and opaques. You'll see that we're going to throw some clear in every now and then, especially if you're trying to separate the colors a bit. I think it helps to throw in a little clear.
Yeah, plus who doesn't have a ton of...
Yeah, who doesn't have a lot of extra clear left over. So.
And it really does stretch the color, I mean, right? I mean, you don't need to be all solid.
Yeah, and we found that, when you're using a lot of dark colors, black in particular, you want to use a really small amount of it because it can sometimes be a little overwhelming.
Right. So you just, like I said, you're just going to try to load them. Then I would put probably some clear on the other side of the orange, and then some green, and then, just, I'll go ahead and keep filling it. But you know what, I just dawned on me, we should maybe talk about the kiln just briefly, what kind of a kiln you need. And
Yeah, we have a small kiln. You'll see the setup here in just a second. So it's I think it's a 6-inch kiln that we're using out there, but often we use an 8-inch kiln. There's a couple of kiln manufacturers that make a Vitrigraph kiln specifically. Even Heat and Genken both have kilns that are made for doing, Vitrigraph. The difference between their kilns are they're square, so they're deeper. Like we're using if you're curious, this is a 4-inch flower pot, and the bigger kilns, like the 8-inch or 9-inch Vitrigraph kilns, you can put a 6-inch flower pot, so a much bigger one. It just gives you more Vitrigraph material, obviously, to play with. Now, what we're doing is a real simple technique with the Vitrigraph. I mean, wouldn't you agree with
right,
that?
very simple, yeah.
I mean, we're not trying to get like a specific pattern to the Vitrigraph. We just want some color. We want it to be kind of fun. We're going to bend it and twist it when it comes out, but we're not trying to create anything too fancy. As you can see how Val's stacking it. So the other thing that we'll do often is, it's good to start out with strips, but as you start to work your way up, I'll use little tiny small pieces in here, right? All those little tiny scraps that, again, you're not sure what to do with all those extra leftover stuff.
Or sometimes I'll just cut my strips.
Yeah, or cut those even smaller if you already have them. The point is, I think it's easier if you can pack the flower pot pretty well, right? So you want to fill it. I think it is, we're dealing with gravity, so as the glass gets hot, it's got to drip out of there, and more mass in there, the weight of it really makes it easier. I know one time I was like, oh, I'm just going to do a little bit, so I only filled the flower pot about halfway full, and it was a lot more work getting the glass out, to be honest, just because there wasn't enough mass or weight of it to really want to flow out. So I find it easier just to, would you agree, just to fill the flower
fill it
pot.
up.
So.
And that's always amazing, too, how much you get. I don't know. Do you want me to go look? I'll go look.
So Val's going to go pop out.
You just talk amongst yourselves.
We
and I'll
turned it on earlier. And,
it's not, it is.
The debate was when to turn the kiln on so it'd be ready live. And so Val and I had a little debate going back and forth, but I think finally we're good. So if you want to follow me out here where we have the kiln set up. Oh, yeah, it's starting to come out.
I'm going to back it off a little.
Yeah, so you can see we weren't here when it first came down. So this is what happens when you're not really watching it. You'll see that we get this real irregular sort of look to it. Real thin, then it gets thicker, and then as it gets heavy, that drops. But you can see what Val's doing here is coming in with some tweezers. I know Val and I have used lots of different tools to do this, and we find that these long tweezers are the best. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
And they're real easy to manipulate it. You can kind of figure out what you want to do with it. You can control it. So one thing that Val can do is by holding it up and pausing, as the Vitrigraph falls out, we can keep the diameter a little wider. So if you're trying to make it a little bit thicker, we can control it that way.
I also just turned it back down a little bit too, because sometimes, just once you get it going, it gets so liquidy that you can't hardly control it. So I backed it off. Once it starts flowing, I back the temperature off just a little bit. So. And
there is a difference in viscosities, between the types of glass. So if we were working with black, black just comes pouring out like water practically. But what we did with the kiln, if you're interested, is we told it to go as fast as it would go to the top temperature it'll go to and just stay there. So it went pretty fast. It took maybe close to an hour to get up to temperature.
Yeah.
You can see as the glass cools, you can start to see the color that's there. Right, so, and we're setting, this flower pot was set up similar to what Val was doing, what we were doing.
Yeah, it was real similar, actually.
Yep. So when
color-wise, too.
So you can't really see the color. It's all glowing orange, if you can see that.
Yeah. So, and you do want to be careful. It drops in, but we have it set up so that it's fine. If it drops, we don't care.
Back up and show.
We're on a concrete floor.
We got concrete. We got nothing on either side because it'll flop out a little bit. So you don't want to be too close to a wall or, we got a fire extinguisher right here on the wall. So, it's still something you need to be careful with. But,
and like a lot of times when we're working with hot glass, you want, it's best to wear cotton clothing, long sleeves if you have it. You'll see Val on her right hand has, this is a welding glove, just a, you know, what you can buy at the hardware store. We sell these things, they're called hot gloves, so I grabbed 2 lefts.
That's what always happens to me.
But you can see the burn marks. I mean, this is from where, you know, where the Vitrigraph probably came over and caught the glove. So you do normally want to wear something on your hands, just in case. You never know.
Never know. So, and you can actually, depending if we get it slowed down, it's really kind of amazing what you can do. We've done it where we put a tile up under it and literally, you know, coiled it and drawn, and you could almost write with it, write your name, or you want to grab that pipe and show them that?
Yeah, I will.
Here,
so the other setup, I'll talk about the setup real quick. So if you're not familiar, so the kiln has the body of the kiln and the top of the kiln, but there's no bottom to the kiln. We have the kiln sitting on a vermiculite board, and we've cut a hole in the vermiculite board. And so the hole needs to be not so big that the flower pot falls through, but big enough, you know, so we can get the glass to drip through. We just put it on a rack. This is just a storage rack. Again, something you could probably buy at one of the big box home improvement stores.
We knew somebody who did it on a ladder. Remember?
That's how I do it at home.
Oh, on a ladder?
Yeah. I have one of these ladders that folds in half, and I just have it kind of set across some rungs. We just need something that's, you know, non-flammable, obviously.
Here, you want this?
Yeah. I'm going to jump in and do this.
You should put
a glove on? I should.
You made me wear one.
We're going to put a glove on it. And people, sorry, we'll put on some safety glasses, right? So this is just a galvanized piece of steel. You can see we've cut like a slot in the end of it. And I'm going to come in and grab this.
Let me get you.
Can you get it?
There.
And I'm going to twist it. And make like a glass spring. So the faster I go, you know,
You're getting.
it's coming out pretty fast, so I'm having a hard time controlling it.
Yeah.
Eventually you get to a point where you just, you know, let that go. Now, we're going to let this cool off for a minute or two, and then it should just slide right off the pole.
Yeah, and can you see now some of this down in the bottom, now you can see the color come back. It's really, you know, you don't always have to use multiple colors either. You can do,
yeah.
you know, do just clear and then use it as a magnifying situation, or just one color. I mean, it's just...
I do a lot of just one color ones. You know, it's like maybe you're working on a project and you find yourself left over with a bunch of single color, and then and you're not sure what to do with all the scraps. I just throw it in a flower pot and make some Vitrigraph out of it, and it's nice to just add that kind of decoration to some other project you're doing.
it just personalizes things, or at least, you know, makes them unique to add your own decoration.
That's what I think so too. I know we showed the raking, you know, a few presentations ago, and if you want to see those, you can always check them out on our video page or go to our YouTube channel. And but I think both those techniques are a great way of using up scrap, but it's also a great way of personalizing stuff, like you said, Val, like making stuff unique, you know.
Making it certainly one of a kind.
Yeah, making it one of a kind.
Nobody else will have done the same thing. So now, see, it is kind of slowed down, which is, I like it when, I like the thicker pieces. I don't like it when it gets real thin and you have all these, you know, like fiber optic things going on. I like this kind of thickness.
Yeah, we used, in this situation here, we just used the whole opening of the terracotta flower pot. And that's what we're getting. And what I've done in the past is drilled a bigger hole, which will give you a wider diameter. So if you use like a diamond-coated drill bit, and you can drill a bigger hole, and you'll get a much bigger diameter.
So we've already got you coming in.
No, I was just
I know, watching her.
watching Kaylee.
I know.
Do you want a glove?
Look at my hand. It's already...
So the other thing to remember is it's much warmer than you think it is. I mean, you'll see it glowing from about down to here, and that's where the glass is relatively soft. Down here, as it stiffens up, it's still pretty warm. So just because we start to see the color doesn't mean it's cool enough to touch. Usually we just set it down on the floor, give it a chance to cool off before we do anything with it. for the fusers out there, you'll probably notice we're not annealing it, right? I mean, it's coming out of the kiln. The thinking is that when you put this on your project later on, you'll anneal it then, so it doesn't really need to be annealed. The only issue I've run into when I was trying to do some really thick ones is sometimes they'll thermal shock.
Yeah, they'll thermal
because
shock.
they'll cool down so quickly because of their thickness. But this size here, you should never have a problem with these. Looks like we're doing a bunch of snakes.
I know. I like my color combo. So it's an adventurine, which I'm a huge fan of, and then the yellow sort of blends into that, and then the orange gives you that little pop of color.
Yeah, you can see this one here. I know it's hard to see. I don't know how well the adventurine shows up, but down in here, this nice green, you get this kind of sparkly look to it. But you know, you can always use the backside too. Right? That's the nice thing about these when you use multiple colors is they have different looks depending on what part of the glass you're using. This is the spring that I.
Watch out! I'm gonna break this, so I don't know where it's gonna go.
So taking the spring off, I just kind of rotate the pipe back and forth. Sometimes it breaks like it did there, but you can see we got this kind of fun-looking glass spring. You can lay that down or break it down into smaller things, you know, diffuse it in. Usually what's fun about this, again, is like all of it is usable. I mean, you can use every little tiny piece of it, which is kind of fun. We just, you know, keep it in a box around here while we're doing stuff.
Okay. I mean, this goes on for a while. It's amazing to me always how much you get from that little flower pot. But it's still going to go for a while.
Yeah, I tell people, you know, plan on about 40 minutes or so, or 45 minutes of pulling, because it takes about that long to empty those little 4-inch flower pots. And as Val mentioned, it's surprising how much you can get out of that. Fun.
I should probably turn it back.
I'll turn it back up.
Yeah.
So this kiln that we have here.
Can't see. Here. I just can't see the.
Sorry, I a little scratch in my throat. But so the kiln again, this one. So Val will turn it up and down, you know, depending on what's happening, right? As it comes out too fast, we turn it down a little bit, then turn it back up. If you have this one does not have a digital controller, but if you had a digital controller, you could do the same thing. You just start it and restop it and adjust the temperature. Or some of the kilns, you can just change the temperature. You can adjust the temperature on the fly by 5 degrees, and you can drop it up and down. You're afraid of stepping on it?
No.
Oh.
Okay, well, so that's
about it. So
that's about it. No questions or anything. How people are just mesmerized, I think.
Anything with molten glass is fun.
yes. But if you have questions, if you think of something later, again, feel free to reach out to us. You can always message us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us at facebook@delphiglass.com.
You got it.
You would think I would have that all memorized by now, but
You
We
would.
don't have our cheat sheet out
yeah, I
there.
know.
All right.
Okay.
Next week, I think we're going to do some flame worked flowers. Oh, not next week.
A
In a
couple
2
weeks.
weeks. Yeah.
In a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
joining us.
Yep.